Today we're going to start to cover the 11th Mediterranean Championship, which I played just a couple of weeks ago from the 19th of June to the 26th. It was a very strong tournament, yeah, we're continuing the trademark series of this channel, the Road to GM series, and I believe that for the first time ever, I actually analyzed all these games, all the games that I played by myself with no help of the engine, which is, mind you, significantly harder. It took me probably about a week to cover all the games, or maybe 5 days. Um, because you really have to use a lot of time and think a lot about the positions, and you don't have someone who just tells you if you're right or wrong. So, also that serves as a disclaimer because probably a lot of my analysis are wrong or maybe not accurate, but it definitely helps you much more to improve in chess to analyze the games by yourself than with the engine, because when you analyze them by yourself, you're looking at the positions with no stress, right, and with infinite time, and you can really come up with, you can really understand your mistakes and what you should do instead. And so when you're gonna play again, it's not like because if you're analyzing with the engine and the engine goes, oh, that's a bad move, you sort of memorize like, okay, this move that the engine is recommending is better, but you don't really understand why, unless, well, you also invest a lot of time in it. But when you analyze by yourself, you really understand things. So um, I was playing against a 1700 on my first round, and I started out with c4. I always like to play slightly offbeat openings against low-rated players, so we have e6, knight f3, d5, e3. Not such a common system, actually. I don't think I've ever played this. Knight f6, knight c3, c5, and this forces a decision because she is already threatening to go d4, which would be very annoying. So I'm basically more or less forced to either trade on d5 or play d4, which I did. And now knight bd7, in my opinion, was the first inaccuracy of the game. If you go and check the database, there's a lot of games played with knight c6, which is a perfectly reasonable move. The position is very symmetrical, and okay, there's plenty of theory to go on from this, which I was not aware of, and I'm still not aware of it because I don't play this, but okay, I knew this was like a normal move. Knight bd7, however, is not a good move because you see the knight on d7. First of all, it obstructs this bishop, and second of all, where is the knight really going to go to, right? In the game, eventually it went to b6, and that's really the only square it can go to from d7. It's not even contributing towards the center, so it's overall not a good move. But I return the favor right away with bishop e2, which doesn't look like such a bad move, and it's not like a blunder or anything, but again, an inaccuracy. In my opinion, I should have traded on d5 and followed up with either bishop e2 or bishop d3. Um, and yeah, after something like bishop e7, the game can go on with castles, castles, b3, and we're gonna have a standard isolated queen's pawn position. And I think white here has a slight advantage, which is normal. But what I didn't like was the fact that you could go c4, and I would have to retreat. And I thought this was good for her because, well, I was already imagining some a6, b5 going on, and some b4, and already some big expansion because she's taking a lot of control over the center. But again, this knight is very poorly placed. If it goes to b6, it obstructs the path of her own pawns. And meanwhile, there's actually some very neat ideas. For example, after some normal moves, castles, castles. Sometimes even e4 is possible in these positions, and when they take, you go knight d2. And you know all the pawns are hanging. However, I analyzed this quite a bit, and again, I could be wrong about this because I am not a 3600 stockfish, but I didn't find anything here for white. But instead, b3, I believe, is a very good move because you see, black does not have time to mount up the pawn storm, So she would have to trade, and yeah, now this pawn is going to be the one that's hurting, and I have all the joy with the open files and semi-open files and activity. So CD would have been a better move. I played bishop e2. The reason why this is not good is because now she trades. And you see, she didn't trade before because I would bring my bishop in the game without having moved it. But now I have moved it once, and she's forcing me to move it again. And she even goes a6, which is a good move. And she just threatens b5 outright. b5, and yeah, my bishop. For example, if I just castle, which is a bad move here, b5, bishop e2, and just bishop b7. And this is a standard position where black is much better because just, compare the activity, right? First of all, black can choose whether he wants to go b4, c4, or trade at all times, at his leisure. This bishop, yeah, someone tell me how this bishop is going to get in the game. This rook is coming to c8. This bishop is a monster. Black is just much better in such positions. So I had to go e4. She went knight b6. I went bishop b3, cd, ed, bishop e7, castles, and rook e1. And in this position, I believe white is slightly better because, again, black still needs some time to get his pieces out, and this knight on b6 is not so impressive. It would definitely be better placed on c6. So she went bishop d7, which is a logical move, knight e5, and rook c8. And here, I made the first mistake of the game. The other moves were inaccuracies, but this, I believe, is a real mistake. I went queen b3 with the idea of going a5 and taking on b7. Greedily winning a pawn. Yeah, it's funny, I don't really mind giving up pawns for initiative and attacks and such, but if someone gives me a free pawn, I will most likely take it, Unless I really find a reputation, or I'll take it. Yeah, it is what it is. I don't know if it's good or bad, but that's the way I roll. But on a serious note, a better move would have been rook e3. Because you see, I have to shift my attention towards the king side, because that's where a lot of my pieces are pointing at, and not towards the queen side, where I try to play in the game. And after something like knight bd5, rook h3, mounting up some pressure, g6, which will most surely have to be played, and bishop h6, rook e8, knight takes d5, knight takes d5. Sorry, actually, knight takes d5 is a mistake here, but ed, rook f3, and you can see how white's position has quite some prospects because all of white's pieces are good, and he's already exerting quite some pressure. And it's clear that white has his play. But I played queen b3, which is not a good move. My idea was very simple. After bishop c6, I wanted to go a5, which I did. Knight d5, take on c6, take on b7. And yeah, this is, again, something I usually like to do, just go pawn grabbing. But in this case, it's actually quite bad. Not to the point where I'm even worse or losing, but first of all, I had to calculate the life out of me to not get my queen trapped, because, in this position, the queen only has one square, and it can't really go back from there, so that's a problem. And sure, I have a pawn, d1 and queen d6. This was a good move, which I had missed. By the way, she can't go rook c7 because I flee with the queen. But after queen d6, sure, I move a pawn, but first of all, it's always a bad sign if you look at a position like for the first time for a few seconds. And if I were to see this position firsthand, I wouldn't even notice that white is a pawn up for some time, because it's really imperceptible. Because because all the pawns are scattered, right? A5, B2, D4, all weak pawns. This queen is awful, and black has quite a lot of activity for the pawn. So this makes the position right about even. But I believe that even in a practical game, it's much harder for white to play. She's threatening perhaps rook b8 followed by queen d8, and to at least give perpetual to my queen, which would have been a very bad result considering we have a 600 point difference, about 600. There are some options here. I played g3. I believe everything else leads to equality. I played g3 with the idea of going bishop f4. And she went rook b8, queen a7, normal. And it's really by sort of a miracle that I'm already not losing. Because, okay, she doesn't have a way to trap my queen. If rook d8, if rook c7, the rook on b8 hangs. And she cannot attack my queen. But yeah, this was no fun calculating. Now she went knight h5, which was which gave me a sigh of relief because this is just a blunder, and it's not too hard to see why. I don't think queen d8 would have been a good move, and after bishop f4, I believe she missed bishop d6, which is a very strong move, because if she moves the rook, I go queen b7, and you see the bishop cuts off rook c7, for example. And it also cuts off rook b8 again, so there's no perpetual there. Oh, sorry. Did not mean to play h6. But bishop d6 would have been very strong. And after it takes, rook takes. It's not all, like, basically black can use the threat of giving perpetual or trapping the queen as a diversion to actually just win his pawn back. And it's quite hard to defend white's position here. Bishop e4, for example, stopping rook a8, defending the pawn on d4. Knight bd5. And I believe black here is just completely out of the woods. b2 is hanging, he's threatening knight c3 and knight takes c4. Black just has a ton of activity, really. So this would have been a very good try for her, and the game would have been not only equal, but extremely drawish, because the position is so simplified. And black really has no other weaknesses, you know? But she went knight h5 in order to stop bishop f4, but this move is just a blunder. I played bishop e4, which is actually not the most accurate move. And it's funny why this is not so accurate. She had this crazy resource of playing rook c8, and after bishop f3, which is the whole problem, because the problem with knight h5 is that I attack the knight, and she cannot move it because I would have this skewered. But she has queen d8, which is a crazy move. And after bishop takes knight, she has rook c7, and that's the point of queen d8. Now the rook on b8 is defended. The queen is trapped. And I would have to give away the queen and then go bishop f4, grab this rook. And white is still slightly better because he's got, okay, two rooks for the queen, a pawn, and somewhat of an advantage. But I don't think, again, I don't think this would have been a very pleasant game for white. But this is quite a remarkable resource, in my opinion. But she went knight d5, and after knight takes, pawn takes, now bishop f3 just works, because there's no more of these wiggles with the rooks. The queen can just get away, so after queen d8, I took the knight. And she resigned on move 24. So, you know, if you see it on paper, 24 move game, okay, the highest rated player wins. But the game was actually quite hard. Since this game wasn't really that long, I just want to take you through the next one, because it also didn't, because it wasn't a very complicated game as well. All right, I'm just changing the Just changing the layout a bit. Right. A little bit of a spoiler there, but that's all right. I was black in this game, and yeah, on the second round, I already got fired up to the first room because there were two game rooms. One had 15 tables, and all the games were transmitted online, and the other room, which was actually full of 2400s and 2300s, actually didn't have any transmitted games, which is a shame because yeah, only like 3 of my games were transmitted in the whole tournament. But more on that later. This game I was black against Jan Subeli, a player from um, Slovenia, I believe. And I think he's like a year or two younger than me, and already an IM, very strong player. But okay, you guys know I've been playing the Caracan, or at least you should know. And I've been getting some very fair results with it. And I also was very glad when I checked that he played this line as white, which, well, I was all right with the draw. Already on the second round against the 2400, and this line is very drawish. It allows black to trade the rooks off immediately, the queens off immediately, and the advantage for white in these positions is really minuscule. So I went knight f6, which is theory. Since he always played this line, it actually gave me quite some time to prepare, or quite some freedom to prepare. Now this move knight fd2 is already, it's a good move. It's, in my opinion, the best move, but it's a little bit hard to understand for the untrained eye why knight bd2 is not played, or even knight c3. You see, if knight d2, for example, I could go g6, and then bishop h6, and bishop g4, and I would really be able to trade off a lot of pieces immediately. But it's a different story when he goes knight fd2, because after h5, which is a good move. Again, these are all sort of complicated opening ideas that I didn't come up with. I actually got the scores from Erwin Lamy on Chessable, on the Caracan. He recommends this h5 move. Also, g5 is a good move. The point is that if black just sits around and develops his pieces normally and stuff, on the long run, white can get some initiative. So black makes sure to get very quick counterplay on the king side. The idea is very simple. It's actually to just actually go h4, h3, g5, g4, and create havoc on the king side. Now he played h4, which is a move. f3, g5, knight c4, g4 is more common, but h4. And now I go g6, f3, bishop h6. And the point of this move is that when this knight moves, I'm just going to trade off these bishops. And of course, the more pieces you trade, the closer black is to a draw. So that's basically what black's strategy. Takes, bishop e6, knight a5, which is not such a great move. Actually, it's an inaccuracy. But I returned with another inaccuracy, which was b6. Okay, the point of this move is to attack this and sort of provoke b6, which I didn't find that much of a problem for me, and it's not. But that's the little point of the move. And, you know, games like these, especially without the queens, are won on very, very tiny subtleties, like provoking a move such as b6 and stuff. Slight structural changes. And so you really have to be careful making these moves. I was spending quite some time in this position. But knight bd7 would have been a much better move. Obviously, this is the desirable move for black. And next, even probably long castles. That's what I wanted to do. But after the game, he actually told me that knight a5 doesn't do anything, because he is not, in fact, threatening to take. Because after a5, the knight is trapped. This knight doesn't have squares, and I'm just threatening rook a7, and actually just winning the knight on the next move. And he cannot come back. Which is actually quite remarkable. But I played b6, knight b3, castles, knight 1 to d2, and c5. Now again, you have to be very careful in such positions to play these moves like c5, because after, for example, a4, knight c6, bishop c4, this is a typical way they can play. And on the long run, this is very weakening, much more than having the structure, the typical Caracan structure I had in the beginning. This is very weakening for black in endgames, because especially king endgames, bishop endgames, knight endgames, because the position is full of holes. For example, a5 is also a very normal move. After rook fd8, it's white usually who gains some initiative here. But I calculated a bit and I understood, well, this king is very awkwardly placed. These pieces are still sort of asleep. And so I thought I could get away with this. Not only get away with this, but get out of any opening problems. Because white is still so underdeveloped. And I believe I was right. He went bishop c4, and after takes, knight d7. The game is just dead equal, not drawn. Sometimes there's differences there. Also, it's to mention that this knight is very badly placed. And also after a5, now I just go b5 and c4, and I steal the initiative. He goes rook fd1, I went rook fd8, c3, knight d2 e5, takes, king c2, knight c4, takes, rook e1, king g7. And here we agreed to a draw. I was actually the one who offered a draw here. I was quite satisfied with having such an quote-unquote easy game. Again, I thought for quite a while in this game. Games, when you just go through them, especially quickly, they might seem like they could have been a blitz game. But, every single move, especially in the beginning of the middle game there, again, there's a lot of subtleties you have to take into account. And we both spent quite some time. But the game ended in 2 hours and a half, which I don't know if you're used to OTB chess or not, over the board chess, but 2 hours and a half for a game of this level is not a lot of time at all. It's actually quite a short game. And the reason why I offered a draw is, again, I was satisfied with the draw, but first of all, if someone is to press in this position, it's black. But I just didn't find anything for me here. As you can see by the arrows, white is going to go rook e2, followed by knight d2, trade off the knights, trade the rooks. There's only one open file, so I really have to trade everything. And the king ending, I believe, is just a dead draw. So these were my first 2 rounds of the Mediterranean Championship. They were not particularly complicated or too complicated games. I mean, the first one actually got quite hectic, but yeah, I sort of got lucky there with her blender. This second game was quite a untroubled game. And yeah, I'll see you soon with the third round. And from now on, the games are really going to start to heat up. So see you soon and peace out.